Welcome back again, everybody. The Fixed Ops Mastermind powered by OEM Interactive. This week, we are talking about the responsibility of leadership with our two guests, Thomas Trzynski from West Her Automotive and Mark Pittman, the Concord Leadership Group. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. Before we get into it, I want to thank our sponsor, Intellicheck. This week is brought to you by Intellicheck. Do you know the pain points that caused customers to leave? Would you like to know if your advisors are offering to book appointments, quoting prices, and interacting with your customers the way you expect? With Intellicheck, you can know it all and get a plan to fix it. Thank you to Intellicheck for bringing this show to us. And gentlemen, segment one of the show is leadership responsibility. What does that mean? Then we're going to move to segment two, which is the evolution of responsibility. And we'll close it out with segment three, the legacy of responsibility. And so we'll get started with talking about what leadership responsibility actually means. We all understand that the leader is there to get people to do things, to get them involved and move that along. But what is a leader's responsibility back to their people? And Thomas, I'm going to start with you on that.
Sure. I think one of the biggest things is leaders. Our responsibility to our people is to make them better, is to continually find ways to enhance their skills, enhance their life, enhance their ability to provide for their families. So as leaders, we have to find the ways to do that. We have to be really willing to give of ourselves. And that could be anything from your time, sharing your experience, even just being an ear to listen, to be able to sit down with people when they're having an issue and listen and be there for them. We have to care. We have to be able to show our people that we care and to be able to actively look for ways to make them better. I think that's the biggest thing we can do for our organizations and for the people in our employees. Again, make them better employees, better people, better family members, fathers, mothers, whatever the case may be. That's my always goal as a leader is to try to make the people around me better.
But isn't Absolutely. That so hard? because when we're going up through school and we're going up through early career, it's individual contribution. I get the work done myself. I get this. I can check these things off. And then all of a sudden, for many leaders that I work with, there's that sense in the inner critic of saying, this isn't my job. I shouldn't have to know who their kids are. I shouldn't have to figure out how they feel. Just do the work that you were hired to do. So it's shifting the kind of responsibility is to shift from getting credit for yourself, internal self-worth for getting the work done, to learning how to do it through others. And what you were saying, Tom, is exactly the fastest way to do it is to show other people that you care about them, so that they're more quickly to trust you as you lead them to the things that have to get done for the work.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I hear our owner, Scott Wheeler, he says it all the time. And one of his favorite speakers was Colin Powell. And Colin Powell says that as a leader, your people need to know two things. They need to know that you care and that you have the answers. And those are the two major things. You don't always have to be the one to just give them the answer, but you have to be willing to take that burden on, figure it out, either get the information for them, show them how to do it, teach them how to do it. But again, that care was the number one piece of it. And I think that's something that gets lost sometimes.
Yeah. And as you just pointed out, Thomas, that it's not giving them the answers. Right. So sometimes we get caught up in that as leaders, thinking that we have to give them the answer. I was at a store training last year, and the manager was a new manager. He had come out of the shop and was a new manager. And he was like, it's tiring constantly giving them the answers and showing them what to do. And then I went and talked to the advisors, and the advisors were like, we wish he'd let us do some stuff ourselves. Like, we wish he'd let us figure out some stuff. And I'm like, these two are diametrically opposed right now. Like, he thinks he has to give all the answers, and they want to try and figure it out themselves.
And that's part of it for as leaders grow too, is to learn that oftentimes Colin Powell, I mean, I don't know how he knows how to have all the answers. Most of the leaders I work with at least know where to find the answers.
Mhm.
Part of the gift of doubt of leadership is that whole idea of, I don't know the answers. Am I being irresponsible and not knowing? I know the direction, I know the course, I know some metrics, but I'm not exactly clear on how to get there. And so I think that's another, growing comfortable with that, that being your job as opposed to that being somehow a ding on your character because you don't know.
Yeah, and I think too, admitting if you don't know something, there's also a piece in leadership that is vulnerability. You know, and being a real person, showing who you are, showing you we don't have to be robots. You know, we're not perfect. We're not on all the time. There are going to be times where there are breaks in character, where there are things that affect us and on the outside, just like it happens with our people. And I think sometimes showing your people that it endears them a little bit. You know, it starts to just kind of give them a little bit of glimpse in that I am a real person just like you. But understanding and saying if I don't know the answer, I think just shows a little bit of vulnerability, helps to build a little bit of trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, so one of the things that you touched on when you first spoke was when you become a leader, that you were an individual contributor up until then. And I'll give the book a plug here, The Surprising Gift of Doubt. That is one of the things that jumped out at me when I started reading this. Is nobody tells you about that when you go to move to a leadership position, right? They're like, oh, you got to know, you got to do this, you got to do this, and have all these things that now you're responsible for. But nobody tells you, like, you're going from handling your stuff to handling everybody's stuff. And there is no roadmap, at least in automotive. And I'm sure Thomas has seen this. There's no pre-training that gets done. People go from one seat to the leader's seat.
Yeah, you get good at doing what your job is, and so people trust you to do more. But they don't tell you that the qualifications for success have changed. So very much like you were saying with that store person, having all the answers and giving all the answers is what got him to where he was. But what's going to get him the next step is to ask the right questions and to know, even if you know. I was working with one CEO who is a skilled engineer. He knew like when something would go wrong, he wanted to show the engineers that he cared for them and he knew what they were dealing with. So he'd ask questions. Well, what it turned out was he was seen as a micromanager because he wasn't coming with, what do you think this could be? And he thought he was being helpful, but they say, get out of my way and let me do my job. It also, and you read about him in the book. At one point he's 6 feet tall with a really deep voice. And part of the employee satisfaction reviews were saying that our CEO talks down to us. And I said, do you physically talk down to them? Oh yeah, I am taller than everyone. I said, so this isn't made up in their mind. What if you sat down instead of doing like a door jam, kind of leaning on the door jam thing? What if you sat down? Oh, and immediately employee satisfaction scores went up in double digits. It's like, oh, he's listening to us now. He's talking at our level. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's certainly not something that you would instantly think of, right?
No, so I don't know if this is why I love what we get to do. Is it seems like for me as a coach, I get to be outside the system. I'm not in the hiring and firing thing, and I can just say, I can ask questions of like, how tall are you? How tall is your staff? And it's okay to ask.
Yeah, and now that you say that, like, I picture I'm 6'1", so
Okay.
I don't meet a lot of people who are taller than me. But when I meet somebody who's taller than me, I'm like, whoa.
You really look up to them.
So what for a modern leader, there are certainly some core bedrock things that probably will never change, right, for what you need to be a leader. But for a modern leader, a leader through the times that we're in right now, what types of skills does one need to possess to be able to thrive? Mark, I'll start with you.
Oh, I was going to throw it to Tom. Tom, why don't you? All right. So, well, it seems like it's an endless stream of things that you're required to do, responsibilities that you have to know. I think one of the most helpful things now in leading in this time is knowing ourselves, knowing what our preferences are, what our blind spots are, and not that we're going to share them with everybody, because not all workplaces are safe. Some people are vying for our position. But when we know where our strengths and weaknesses are, and know that the weaknesses are just a bug, they're a feature of who we are. They're not a fault that we have to necessarily correct. That can really help. And one of the ways that people do that is learning their leadership preference. There's 4 different, I'm a nerd. So there's 4 different styles of leadership that have been researched by academic bodies. It's servant leaders, transformational leadership, transactional leadership, and charismatic leadership. And just knowing my behaviors are this, and having that, knowing that, I tend to operate charismatically as I expect people to trust me because of who I am. Maybe if I cast a vision and do something like a transformational leader, or maybe this space requires more of a transactional of, let's look at your job description. This seems to be outside of that. And let's bring the scope creep back in. I've been I just filled with joy seeing all people realize, there are choices. I can move in different ways. I don't have to just do leadership the way I've copied others or figure out, I've seen it on the movies, I have to do it this way. I get choices, and there are tools that I can use to do it.
Yeah, that's great. And certainly as I came up, and I learned a lot of leadership stuff from my dad when I was growing up, and that was a much different time. So those and look, it was early 90s. That stuff still worked. You could still yell at a technician, they would yell back at you, and then after work you'd go out and have dinner. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work now. It doesn't work that way now. So Thomas, how about you? What do you see as the skill sets needed to thrive in today's environment?
Well, there's a few, and I think Mark hit a lot of it, really nail on the head with a lot of what he said. That old school mentality, the manager that was the hammer, right? That everything was just because this is the way that I say it. It's good. You're going to do it, or you're in trouble. You're going to get fired. You can go work. So, like you said, that doesn't work. Think about how many vehicles you can fix today with just a hammer, right? 0. So it's the reason that the technicians have an entire toolbox. They buy tens and hundreds of $1,000s worth of tools, because they need to know which tool to use in different situations. Mm-hmm. So leaders, I think we also have to have the same tools in our toolbox, but our tools for the most part are going to be emotional. So that emotional intelligence to know yourself, understand, like you said, where your weak spots, where your blind spots are, but be willing to work on those. Number one, that's gonna be a big piece. You have to be able to self-diagnose, but you truly have to want to make yourself better in order to be able to make people better. So emotional intelligence is a big one for me, and not just with yourself, but with others. Being able to quickly read their emotions, what the potential drivers are behind their emotions, and know what affects all of your words and your actions and the things that you do, your body language, what that's going to do to that person that's sitting across from you. That's a big piece of it. But then I also think flexibility and communication style is the other massive piece that leaders have to have right now. We're in a different time. You can't speak to everybody the same way. And it's crazy to think that if you've got a team of 10 people or 50 people or 1,000 people, to think that all of those people have the ability to flex to your style is crazy. But as leaders, we generally have we've been put into these positions because we do have the ability to do that. We need to continue to work on that and be able to communicate the way that person wants to communicate. They're all going to be different. They have different needs, verbally, emotionally, and you have to be able to understand those and flex to it. I think those are the 2 biggest things: that emotional intelligence and an ability to flex your communication style.
Yeah, that's a great point. And inside the dealership, I mean, going from personalities in sales to your porters in the service drive, your technicians, your parts department, it's a really varied set of personalities that you're dealing with, and yet they all need to work together to take care of this one customer, right? Everybody needs to be able to pull together, and as the leader, that's that's your responsibility, right? As the title of the show goes, it's your responsibility is to be able to get everybody to work together to take care of our
That actually answers the question I was going to ask: is what do you do with the leader? Or how do you approach, either of you approach the leaders that are just, I don't care their story. I don't care about their personal life. I was told not to growing up. I was told you leave that at home. You don't bring your emotions to work. You show up. You're an adult. You said you'd want to do this job. Just do the job. So how do you guys help them become more emotionally in tuned, even if they don't really care?
It's tough. They really have to want to. That has to be there in order for it to blossom. Sadly, in the past, we've had to part ways with some people that were fantastic human beings, but just didn't. That flex just wasn't there. And as painful as it is, again, as leaders, our responsibility is also to that entire team. We do our best to coach and to draw that out. I think also as leadership, part of that is being able to inspire the people around you versus motivate. I think those are two completely different forces where that motivation is external. That's the carrot and the stick. And that only lasts as long as you've got a shiny enough carrot for them to chase after. Over time, that can be more demotivational and it turns to just the proverbial stick versus the inspiration, which is internal. And finding ways to connect with people on a one-to-one basis, understand who they are, show them some care, show them some compassion and empathy. That's where you start to build that trust, which then starts to create and bring the inspiration. They want to work for you because they want to make you proud. It's not that they don't want to get yelled at. They want to make you proud. And when you can get to that level, you end up with a team that's just unbeatable.
Yeah, and that's where you get those teams where the leader can actually take a vacation, right? Because they know that the team is going to take care of things because they do want to make the leader proud, right? So they don't want mom or dad coming home and getting a bad report card, right? that things went south while they were on vacation.
Yep.
And that's a great distinction there, but with motivation too. Because in the dealership world, I'm sure this happens elsewhere too, but in the dealership world, we've oftentimes been guilty of taking that carrot and just leaving it out there, right? And then as you said, it becomes demotivating rather than motivating, right? If you can never reach that carrot, or you can reach it every single time, then there is no motivation there, right? Now it's an expectation that's what I'm going to get, right? Somebody gave the example one time of back in high school, if you had a teacher who gave you 50 points for putting your name on the paper, and then you forgot to put your name on the paper and you got everything else right and you got a 50, you'd be like, come on. But that was just given to you, right? It was an expectation that you were going to get those points.
I've heard about it. I grew up in a weird family where I had to listen to motivational speakers as well as do my schoolwork. So I had Dale Carnegie reading and other reading and schoolwork. And one of the stories was about the business owners that would one year had a good year, so they gave turkeys to their employees. And they had a good year the next year for Thanksgiving, and they gave turkeys again. By the third year, it was an entitlement. They were expected to, where's my turkey? Oh, we just didn't have as good a year this year, but you've always given us a turkey. So,
right.
And I think part of what the question was honest from me, but I think it's also that the owners or the leaders of the leaders need to also be on the same continuum of learning and growing, because what motivates sales isn't going to necessarily motivate parts of service or the porter. So it's not easy. That's for sure. It's worthwhile, but it's not easy.
That's for sure. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it anyways, right? So I used to always tell my teams that if the work was easy and fun, then the owner of the dealership would be here writing up service repair orders, not us. Right? That's the reality. All right. Before we move into segment 2, we are going to do our quote of the week, which is brought to you by Parts Edge. That is, the task of the leader is to get his people from where they are to where they have not been. That's from Henry Kissinger. All right. And that went into my stat too. It's not supposed to go into the stat. That's for later. But so segment 2 is the evolution of responsibility, right? And as that quote said, the leaders are there to take your teams in the realm of fixed ops. It's to take them from X amount of gross profit or hours produced or productivity metrics to the next level, right? To keep moving that forward. So as the current leaders in the dealership, what can we do to help someone grow into being a leader? Tom?
I think step one is hiring. It starts with your hiring practices, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And you can never be afraid that the next person is going to do your job better or that they're going to steal your job. You have to continue to invest in that person, I think, fearlessly. The term that we always use is build your replacement. You should always be training your replacement. That would free you up for the next larger opportunity that came up. You can't be willing to gatekeep and hold on to all of this information. I think that as leaders in our industry, as we see those people come in, sometimes within our business, we watch them come up as porters and greeters or technicians. But sometimes they come from outside. I think that we have to be looking for those qualities when we hire, right? You can't, if you hire a porter that can move cars, you're going to get somebody that just can move cars. So when you hire a porter, you hire for 2 positions ahead of what you're looking for. I want a porter that can also learn to greet customers. They present well. They can speak to customers if they need to. And then I want to also be able to train them to fill in at the service desk as they need. So we're looking for people that are 2 positions ahead of the position that we're hiring for on our initial read of that individual, right? But then really being able to invest in them. Look for training opportunities, look for ways to partner them with mentors. We have so many people in this business with great experience and life stories and things that they can share with the people around them. Connecting those two sometimes makes a world of difference. Hey, this guy's been through a similar scenario, or this woman over here, or this service manager, she's gone up through this. I'm going to send you over here and spend a little bit of time with her and learn from her. The experience that we have, we always need to be leveraging that and making sure that we're making those connections and finding some mentors.
That's great. What's your take on that, Mark?
I think that's really well said, Thomas. That was I love the idea of hiring for 2 positions further on, because people do leave, and so then you have more of a bench to draw on and someone to work with. Somebody that wants to stay at their position that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't necessarily help you as a leader in keeping the operations going. Mm-hmm. One of the things too that I think is really helpful is if I'm a reader, so I kind of tend to look for readers, but looking for people that are looking for that are open to new information. So if there's podcasts or reading or a pamphlet or however they take in information, and it's a job, I understand that, but there's a little bit of an openness to learning would be something that would help people grow into it, because coaching skills I find are the most helpful when it becomes in adding to a leader's toolkit. When you can have the solidity, the peace of mind, or the confidence to ask a question, knowing that you may not have the full answer, and you're truly generatively trying to figure it out. So it's not that you're parroting questions. It's not like you're just saying, well, what do you think? Or like a chip on your shoulder, or just because you have no clue. And so you're just saying, what do you think? But becoming sincerely curious and growing with those questions of, I've got some ideas on how to do this, but you're actually doing this aspect. What are some things that you could see from where you are? I didn't know, I was a naturally curious kid, and I've loved how that served me through all the different positions I've had, because I get to know people that others just assume or walk by and don't even acknowledge. And you get, it feels like it's going slow at first, but it goes faster because you have the people know that you care about them and you see them as capable and as having something to contribute.
Yeah, I think that trust is big too. As you start to ask those questions and you find out, I like to say we frame it up. I'm going to go through here's all of the facts that we have. I'll fill in some, you fill in some. based on all of this information, then what would your decision be? And you start to build this back and forth, back and forth trust. That's hard to say sometimes. That does go a long way.
Well, and you're training people to think, which is also one of the biggest problems with leadership is becoming the bottleneck. There's that sense of, why don't my people do the things that I tell them to do because I told them to do it and they should be doing it? Why are they always coming to me? Well, if you're answering the questions every time, they're going to keep always coming to you because it becomes the culture.
Yeah.
And so giving them some space to think on their own. I remember I was leading one organization where people would come to me with the problems, but not with any solutions. And so I would tell them, this is like my cat bringing the dead hamster or the dead chipmunk to my doorstep. It thinks it's helping me eat. That's what I've been told, that cats will bring rodents to your doorstep when they think you're hungry. And I don't see it as a benefit. I see it as something I have to clean up off of my doorstep. So you have a unique set of abilities to see this problem. I would love it if you could also come with maybe 2 or 3 ways that we might be able to address it, because clearly I've missed it the whole time. And it was great because you could see people like, oh yeah. And they'll come up to you after and they're like, I got another dead rodent, but I think I have a shovel and a broom.
That's a great way to frame that.
It was birthed out of frustration. And I was like, I don't think I can unleash this frustration on people because that wouldn't be endearing or helping them stay or feel valued. So how can I make this? It's amazing how crafting things over. I used to mow my lawn and it was the best. I found mowing my lawn to be the best time because I could really yell at the people that I wanted to yell at without anybody hearing, because the lawnmower was so loud and I could verbally process through what I needed to do and come up with something that might not tear them apart.
That's great. I have to be careful when I'm mowing my lawn because I usually have headphones on, so then you don't even realize how loud you're yelling, so the neighbors can actually hear you over the lawnmower. So
fortunately, my neighbor likes 80s music because I do too, because I hear him singing karaoke while he's got his headphones on. Yeah,
that's what I'm concerned about, is people hearing me sing. That's should always be drowned out by the lawnmower. So do you think there are some skills that a leader absolutely needs to have, and some that would be good, or we'll call them optional, things that would be good to have, but not necessarily have to be a good leader or a great leader?
I think, the ability to listen is going to be a big thing. That's a skill that can be built. I love the saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we should be listening twice as much as we're speaking. That skill. Another one that I don't always count as a skill, but I think it absolutely falls in that, is the ability to be intentional, and to understand that there are consequences to every single action. And then from there to recognize that, slow down, think about it, be intentional with your words, your actions. We have a book, and actually, so Dr. Harry Cohen, be the sun, not the salt. Every interaction you have with somebody, you have the ability to build them up or tear them down. So you have to constantly have that in your head, that understanding of, am I going in this conversation, am I going to be the person that people tend to gravitate to, or am I going to be pushing them away and hurting them? So I think the ability to be intentional, understand yourself, I think those are skills, because they can be learned. But I think communication also is the other massive one. The ability to clearly define your goals, your expectations, communicate that to your team, make sure that they understand, and then be able to, just ask questions. Am I asking you something that's unfair? Or is there anything that you're missing, or some reason that you can't do what I'm asking you to do? The ability to put all of those things down clearly, concisely, make sure they understand them, and then be able to have very candid conversations without fear.
That's great.
So in the theme of book showing, there's a book I like a lot too. It's called Exactly What to Say by my friend Phil Jones. One of the principles that we teach from that is the worst time to think about what you're going to say is in the moment when you're saying it. So very much to what you were saying, Thomas. And for me, as a Franklin Covey certified coach, I think of it as habit 2, beginning with the end in mind. That what is the outcome I want here? And will this help do that? And having some grace with yourself that you're going to mess it up. I think one of the best times I get to be working at a boarding school as a faculty member. It was really bizarre because it was like what you'd see from like a Harry Potter movie or something, in a way. No magic that we knew of, but it was still very regimented, and you're dealing with adolescents. But one of the biggest moments I had as a faculty member there was when I screwed up. I almost got excited about being able to apologize, because people hadn't seen that before. They'd seen people hide and cover up and front, especially adults. But when I'd go up to them and say, you know what, I really messed up, and what I said was right, but I shouldn't have said it in front of your friends like that in the pathway. I'm really sorry. And it was amazing how much trust that engendered, and how much that it just built the culture better. So learning where your own faults are, or learning moments are, you can come back up to them and say, I might be getting this wrong, but my favorite question as a leader is to ask, I learned this from coach training, was to ask, could I ask you a potentially inappropriate question? Or could I ask you a potentially really hard question? Getting permission to ask a question or make an observation really helps their defenses go down, and it helps you to have a conversation and paves the way for some conversation. And it also shows that you're not, set into your ways necessarily, that you may be open to a little bit of, maybe I'm seeing this wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen that framed sometimes too, with asking the person, is this a good time to give you some feedback? Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to just, hey, come in my office for a minute.
That always stresses me out. Is this a good time to give you feedback? No, but no. I got to know now.
Yeah, it depends on what the feedback is.
Is it good feedback?
Yeah. Positive or negative? Then I'll let you know. So we just talked about a bunch of things that are probably skills, and skills can be learned. But can a leader be created? Can somebody who doesn't necessarily have the inner ability, I don't want to say to want to be a leader, because you shouldn't be a leader if you don't want to be a leader, but sometimes people are reluctant leaders. But somebody who wants to be a leader but doesn't necessarily have innately the ability to be a leader, can they learn what it takes to be a leader?
I would take issue with that question, because I think for me, leadership is influencing others, and in our daily life, we're influencing others, whether it's transacting something at a store to get a coffee or something. So I think yes, I think I think some people are going to find more joy in leadership than others. I think there's tremendous freedom for people that know, not just in a diminutive way, but strictly, I just want to be an individual contributor. I don't really desire management, which I don't understand, but I have seen so much joy from those people, and they become really safe team members in some ways, because other people that don't know how to healthily grow up a ladder of management will sometimes take pot shots or try to tear others down. And so I do think that it can be taught. I think I don't think everybody gravitates to it, or nor wants to. And I think that's where some leaders get a little bit toxic in their thinking. Well, they just don't want to grow, or they don't want to do something. No, they're actually doing what they're hired to do. that shouldn't be a ding on their character, that they're doing exactly what we've asked them to do, and maybe even more, and they're doing it with a good attitude. This is great.
Mm-hmm. Thomas?
I do agree. I think you can help it along, but it really has to be something that they want, and that they want for the right reasons. So often we'll see, people think that leadership position or that management position is a way out of stress, right? Mm-hmm. They look at a good service manager and they go, oh, he's just sitting in an office. He does some paperwork from time to time. Yeah. Sits back, walks around, talks to the guys, talks to the people up front. But the reality is it's a duck on a pond, right? On the surface, it's just a duck floating by. There's two little legs underneath the surface going a mile a minute. There's 1,000 other things that service manager at that time has their hands around. And not only that, but they're responsible for all of those people and everything that those people do, right? So many times we'll say it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. So that's something that you take on your shoulder as a leader, that everything that everybody does in your team, it's your responsibility. It may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. So if they're looking to get to an easier path, this is not it. But the ones that truly have a desire to help others, I think that it can be taught. But it is intrinsic to that person, right? Because the same, again, my stupid sayings, the same water that the same boiling water that softens a potato hardens the egg, right? So it's not the environment, it's the object within the environment that gets shaped. So it's entirely up to them how they take those different stimuli, how they react. There are certain things in certain situations that would break one person, that another person takes that and they absolutely thrive. And that becomes a driving force in their career, in their personal life. And, now they don't let anything stop them. But another person would have that same exact situation and go a completely opposite, different direction. So I think generally it is within people if it's something that they truly want to do for the right reasons. But again, a lot of that is intrinsic.
Very, very interesting answers there. Before we move into segment 3, which is the legacy of responsibility, we're going to do our stat of the week that you got a preview of if you were quick a few minutes ago. 69% of employees say they would work harder if they felt their efforts were better recognized. The stat of the week is brought to you by Automotive Warranty Network Incorporated. And so as we move into segment 3, the legacy of responsibility, and considering that quote, it's incumbent upon leaders to do what they have to do to make the team feel wanted, right? Thomas, you said as a leader, if you're really good, they want to make you proud, right? So you want to do the things but how do we get to that point? How do we get to where our team wants to do something to make us proud, not to avoid the stick?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of that is, again, being your true self, and that comes with trust, that comes with one-on-one interactions, and continually showing them that you are looking out for them in many ways. It can be something as simple as teaching, right? As leaders and managers, we have to make some very difficult decisions. And those decisions are not always going to be popular. They're never going to not one time we have 100% of the people that love the decision that you make, and everyone, but we have the responsibility of making that decision. So explaining to our people, and sometimes sitting them down and walking them through that fact that, listen, I have to make a decision. I know not everyone's going to like it, but here are the factors that I had to consider when I made that decision. So you start to teach them a little bit about the why, and again, show them that I'm not just doing this willy-nilly. I understand that there are people that aren't going to like it for reasons A, B, and C. I get that, but here's what I had to think of. And demonstrating to your people consistently that you're on my mind. I'm thinking of you when I make these decisions, and I'm not just taking you for granted. But also, like that stat showed, being able to appreciate your people. I was thinking about this just maybe a week or so ago. In my entire career, so my first service manager, I love him to death. He taught me an awful lot, but I also picked up a lot of things from him that I didn't want to do. And I made sure that I was never going to be that guy. And I think in my 10 or 15 years working with him, I don't think one time I heard that I did a good job. I knew that he appreciated what I did, and I understood that, but he never actually said, "Hey, Tom, you did a great job." So that's one of those things that I always brought myself up when I had the chance to become a manager. And even before that, I made sure that people heard it all the time. And I don't look at it as coddling or anything along those lines. And you can't be fake about it. You have to be real. But some of the people, even the generation today, the younger generation, some of them need to hear it on a daily basis, whether it's good or bad. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, a quick little high five. Hey, you killed it today. Thank you. That's it. That goes a long way. Or to hear them overhear a situation. Hey, you did a great job with Mrs. Jones. Thank you. That was awesome. Just those little tiny interactions here and there, and the ability to show a little bit of appreciation really, really goes a long way.
And I think we can use our notes apps on our phones or a piece of paper that's in our pockets or business cards that somebody else gave us to jot little notes to remind us throughout the day. But I think that's really important listening to you say that, there was a guy named Quint Studer who worked with hospital systems. And one of the things that we were meant to do as managers in a hospital system and leaders was find people in our department and that did something specific. We had to write 2 notes a week to people about a specific thing that they did. It got photocopied, put in their HR file, and then sent to their home. Because that way they would open it up from work in front of their family or their roommates or whoever was their home unit. And the power of that was just building people really care.
Yeah.
What I find powerful is the power of story. I've said curiosity a lot in this, and sincerely being curious about, wow, I would not have responded that way when that decision was made. What is going on there? But a way to do that is to understand the people's story. People aren't always going to stay with you, but they see themselves as on a journey or living some sort of experience. Even if they don't know where their journey is taking them, they're living some sort of experience. What's the experience they're living? What is it that they want to have? And then being able to tie the work tasks to their lived experience, their greater experience that they want to have. Oh, you want more freedom to go to concerts? This type of thing here. If we get this done now, or if we have this production level, we'll be able to have these different rewards. Whatever it ties it in there, showing them that a little bit about them. Again, some leaders roll their eyes at this because it's just sort of like, they're of our ilk, I guess, of the raised by the people that just said, just do it because I said so. But it does go faster, and it shows people there are little touches that you don't have to become Mr. Rogers, or you don't have to become somebody you're not. But those little encouragements can be really, it's remarkable. It's risky. It feels risky when you first do it, but then when you start seeing people really appreciate it and the camaraderie that brings, and how some of the other people on your team will start doing it with each other, it becomes a really self-iterating positive that can really change your culture too for the good.
Yeah, and I mean, I think about it from my own life. If I do something that my wife typically does, I'm like my dog, like waiting for the hey, thanks for doing that. I mean, like, and when it doesn't come, sometimes you're like, hey, did you notice that I did XYZ? Like, oh yeah, thanks. Right? It's the same thing that our teams are looking for. It's just that little bit of acknowledgement. I think that's such a cool thing that you talked about, Mark, with writing out a note of something that they did well, and then mailing it to their house so they open it in front of their family. That's a very cool simple thing to do.
And it builds up an HR file so that when you're looking for the next promotion or something, you can see, is this the right next position for them? Maybe they're really good with technical things and not so good with people.
Yeah.
And so you have some track record for that as well.
I think I'm stealing that one. I like that.
Quint, I attributed it. I'm getting to the edge of my attributing it to Quint Studer. It's just going to be what I've always taught people to say. No, it won't be there.
That's excellent. The West Her envelope budget just went up.
That's right.
Why are all these postage stamps? What is this? Why do you want to know my home address? I don't. Yeah.
All right, so we're into the legacy of responsibility, which as leaders, I would hope, as Thomas pointed out, if you're a leader for the right reasons, that one of the things that you want to do is leave a legacy, is if of nothing else, of other leaders that you have brought into the fold. Right, you've taken those people, Thomas, that you hired as a porter, and now they're a service manager somewhere. And it may not be at your store or in your group, but they're a service manager somewhere because of what you did for them. And so, how can we be the best leader that we can be, so that we can provide that to other people?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we are continually working on ourselves. I'm a big believer that if you're not growing, you're dying. So, and if you're not a reader, that's okay. We're in the age of the cell phone. There are podcasts, there are books on tape. I mean, I'm in the car probably 10 to 15 hours a week. So I've switched from sitting at home reading listening to books on Audible. So, and Mark, I'm picking up all the books that you were showing there. I'll have all of those shortly. But that's one of those things where I'm continually trying to hone my skills so that I'm better for the people around me. But the reality is too, again, the true care and seeing that victory when those people come up, when they win, when you watch them, starting families. I use my boss, our vice president of Fixed, is a man named Jay Galligan. He's been my mentor and friend. He is amazing. And it's funny because West Her, a little bit about us. We're the largest in New York State, and last year I think we were 16th in the country as far as the size of auto dealer groups. Wow. He started as a hourly. He did express some oil changes and things, and has worked his way up. So as far as fixed operations go, it doesn't get much bigger than Jay. But you ask him the thing in his career that he is most proud of. He's not going to tell you about that. He's not going to tell you about the money that we, the income that we drive here and those sort of things. He's going to tell you about the time that he was a service manager in the store. He had 10 technicians within 1 year buy their first house. And to him, that was the greatest nod as a leader that he could get, is that they trusted him enough to care for their future, that they were able to make that investment and continue to keep working. But amazing. If you don't think that way, it becomes very hard to get people to really want to follow you. You really truly have to care and want them to succeed. So many times in this world, people love misery. They love to see other people miserable. That's the reason you got Twitter and all those sort of places. I'm sorry to sound like an old man, but it's misery loves company, and people love to see that drama, and they like to see other people fail. But the reality is, if you want someone to follow you and you want someone to really want to emulate you and to do those things, you have to lead by example, and you have to truly, truly care about them as a person and about their long-term success.
I love that. Continuing to learn and to care. I think part of it too is also knowing your definition of success. What is enough for you? Most of the people I work with can't define that. They've always had that handed to them, or they look at their corporate goals, or we live in a culture where bigger is better, more is better. And so to know what does that look like for you and for your life situation can be really helpful to know. I'm really good at middle management, or I'm really good at this department head. I don't want to go more. And for people that don't know that, I have been remarkably surprised over 20 years, which I shouldn't be, but over the 20 years of executive coaching, of doing a simple values inventory to figure out, what are my values? What do I care about? And there are a million. If you Google values inventory, there are a ton on the web. But knowing these are the things that I hold valuable, and making sure that you're giving into those each week, at least each week. Each day could be too much. It will help you also to synthesize yourself to, what do other people value? Is it freedom that they value more, or is it having a connection? And as you're able to help them start unearthing their values, the legacy in that is amazing, because they can start being more true to who they are, in whatever position they are, whether they're still with you decades later or not.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about it that way, of understanding. Like I've always tried to understand my team, but I don't necessarily know that I went to the level of their values, right? Like you could infer some of what their values were.
Yeah, it's not always appropriate to say, okay, we're going to have a campfire and sing Kumbaya and talk about our values. You have to know your place, but as you become more aware of yours, you can start just practicing. I like calling it the dialect of the other person. Like you're speaking the dialect of the other person. So you can start saying things in different dialects, and based on departments in the organization, or based on just individual people. And if you can if that can be kind of a game, if you're competitive or not, some people like play, some people like competition and scorecards. And if you can make it a little bit of a checklist that you're trying to grow in and trying to connect with, that can also make it something tangible for the intangible stuff of personal relationships.
Yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. And so as we come to a close, the in creating those new leaders, what are some of the things that we can do to set them up for success? And I realize a lot of that is going to be preparing them for leadership, right? And as Mark, you started out with, preparing them for the fact that they've been an individual contributor and now they need to look out for all the others. But what can we do once we put them in that seat? What can we do to help ensure their success?
For me, it's no silence. There's nothing we can do. It's hopeless. No, not at all. I was going to say earlier, I never knew how awful a person I was until I got into leadership, because what you were saying, Thomas, before about you're going to make decisions and not everybody's going to agree. It was consistent. There was one person that didn't agree consistently, but it was a different person. That one person always shifted hats and was sure to tell me how bad I was as a leader. So I think it's finding out, I guess it's having their back in leadership for what first, just letting that they know that you're not going to second guess them. And so that whatever that takes for you, is it weekly meetings? Is it checking in with them throughout the day in a way that doesn't totally ostracize them with their team, but in a way that also lets them know that you're there for them. And I think it's also having some set questions that you can ask, like when people do things, did that go as you planned? How did you want people to feel from that interaction? Having some of those beginning with the end in mind kind of questions, and fueled by sincere curiosity. It can't be fueled from gotcha mentality of, whack-a-mole. Oh, that was awful. Boom. How did you expect people to feel? It's not the hammer approach. It's more of the, they're trying to help them see them on a continuum and growing.
And I think I very much agree with a lot of that. I think trusting them and allowing them to fail, but being there to pick them back up and to back them and go, all right, well, what do we learn from this? And that's the biggest thing. We're better than our mistakes, and we need to make sure that our people understand that they are better than their mistakes. You've spent this entire lifetime building your name. A mistake here and there is not going to tarnish that name, right? We understand that you're better than that, but you also don't get any better if you don't make mistakes, if you don't go through rough times, if you don't fail, if you don't do those sort of things. Steady seas don't make seasoned sailors. So you've got to be there. You got to be that light in the dark. So somewhere that they've got a compass, they know which direction to go. But at the same time, they also have to know, they have to understand that there are repercussions to actions, and there are things that you're going to do that are wrong. But we're going to have to let you do that, and then coach you after the fact on, hey, here's what I would have done, or here, did you think about this? Or I love those questions, Mark, of that. How did you expect this to go? Like that's a fantastic question.
Well, and I like what you're saying too, because most leaders, we have some sort of persona up there. And that's because it's not necessarily safe to be a leader, or because people expect to have some confidence in their leader. And so we're fronting with that. But when you're starting to mentor someone and saying, yeah, no, we all fail. There are good failures. There are bad failures. Embezzlement, that's a bad failure. That's a court case. Erring on the side of, so one of the hospital I was at, I hope I can say this here because it's just a part of the anatomy, but they had a dumbass ward where they would, in a customer service, they had a statue that they would give, and everybody was vying for serving the staff so much that they did a stupid thing for the staff. And so it was the director of the department all the way down. And it helped also mitigate risk, because people would come midweek and say, hey, you know what? I think I'm in line for the award. I just did this. And so they could put out some fires before it was there. But just letting them know, yeah, we don't all get it right at the first time. And and that's what you'll learn as leaders. We're all making it up as we go. There are some guidelines we have as a dealership. There are some guidelines we have as an organization. Here are some values that we try to make our decisions based on. But I love your saying that, Thomas, but just letting them know. Yeah. So what did we learn from that?
Right. The in your book, Mark, you talked about the imposter syndrome as being a good thing, and it really reframed it for me. To be completely honest, because I have dragged imposter syndrome with me throughout my career, and with the whole time going, somebody's gonna figure this out soon. And it really helped to reframe it for me inside your book.
Thank you. So part of it, so in the short form is we have the doubt, and we often work from fix to fix, trying to fix what we're lacking: time management, people skills, certifications, degrees. But sometimes that doubt can get so big that we just finally figure out, well, what if we're the right person? What if I'm the right person for this team? Yeah. What if our team's our team always falls short here, but what if that's the voice that this conversation needs to have? And you start developing that confidence of, oh, we operate differently, but here's why. We're not throwing out the external stuff. We know this research is all good, but we're also being able to own our own uniqueness, and not in an exclusionary way, but just we're complementing the conversation. We're bringing this to the team. So thank you. I'm glad that was inspiring, because it's the number one trait that I've seen with 21 years of executive coaching is most all good leaders that are in it for the right reason feel like they're faking it. And they feel like they're imposters, and they're going to get found out either because they're having so much fun and nobody should be allowed to have this much fun, or because they really have no clue, but things keep happening well. Like in their track record, the successes are there. They're not really sure how they're going to do it again this year, but the history seems to be that they'll do it again this year.
Right. It was always my joke. I need to hurry up and get promoted before they figure out I have no idea what I'm doing. Not a clue.
It's terrific. I watched the Blue Angels special the other day. I think it's on Prime. And I put a post up on LinkedIn about this, because the boss, as they call him, the head of the Blue Angels, right? So he's the best of the best. And he talked about, every time I put this blue suit on, he's like, I have such imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing here? This dude is the best of the best. Wow. And he's talking about having it. It was quite incredible. All right. Well, we have come to the end. Tom, Mark, this has been an amazing hour. I have learned a lot, as I know everybody watching has. Thank you again for taking the time to be here with us and share your wisdom. We are all grateful. And to everybody out there, we will see you again next week. Thanks for being here. Before we go, another thank you to our sponsor, Intellicheck. And everybody, we'll see you next week.